Hi, welcome to this screencast. My name is Robin Lakuta, and I'll be showing you how to configure some iSCSI storage on a storage appliance running Netapp ONTAP 6.4. We're then going to connect that storage to an ESXi host, and then we'll create a data store on that storage. Right, so let's get into it. So first of all, I'll explain what I'll be going over. So first of all, I'm going to cover the prerequisites because you're going to need a network already set up. I'm going to roughly explain the steps we're going to go through, and then I'll demonstrate and I'll bring up the documentation that I've created to show clearly what we're going to be doing, and then I'll conclude what we just went through. Right, so prerequisites. So you're going to need to have a network with the following items here. So you're going to need to have one ESXi host that's all fully configured with a management NIC and a storage NIC. You're going to need a Netapp simulator running Netapp 9.4. Though if you use a slightly different version of ONTAP, then the on command will look slightly different, but the steps should be about the same. You're going to need a Windows client to access the management interfaces, and you're going to need to have a Netapp iSCSI license on your Netapp ONTAP appliance. That's very important because for Netapp, you license all your different features, and if you don't have the Netapp iSCSI license installed, then you won't be able to create any iSCSI storage. As you can see, I also have a DC and a router. Those aren't necessary. The DC is just there if you want to use DNS. Right, so the steps. So as you can see on the right here, this is what our system is going to look like by the end. All the stuff here, all this logical stuff here is not going to exist. It doesn't exist yet. And all the stuff here does not exist yet either. The only bits that will exist here at the moment should be one aggregate, two interfaces, the management will be set up, management here will be set up, and you won't have any of this. So the steps we're going to go through is we're going to create our SVM, our LIF, and a volume. Then we're going to go over to our ESXi machine and set up all the ports and port groups, etc., to make sure that we can connect to iSCSI and make sure we have our initiator address that we can put into the initiator group on Netapp. I'll explain that as we go on. So yes, here we go. So on the Netapp, we're going to have set up an initiator group, a port set, and then we're going to set up our LUN with that port set and initiator group. And then we're going to make sure that iSCSI is enabled, otherwise it won't work. And then we're going to go back to our ESXi, make sure the storage is connected properly, and then create a data store in the LUN that we've just connected through iSCSI. So let's get into it. So I'm going to go into my remote interface. Let's find it. Here we go. So here's my Windows client. And as you can see, I've logged onto my on-command system manager. So first off, you're going to go to storage. In storage, you go down to SVMs. In SVMs, you may or may not have any SVMs, but we're going to create a new fresh SVM for our storage. So I'm just going to call this SVM iSCSI. IP space we don't need to worry about. We need to make sure that we select iSCSI as the data protocol that we're going to be using. Security style will stay Unix because we're using this with ESXi, which is a Unix-based machine. The root aggregate, so that's just the aggregate that the SVM will be using to create volumes on. I only have one aggregate. You can use any aggregate you want. DNS, we don't need to worry about DNS. That's not used. Right, so this stuff you can set up right here, but I'm going to go through step by step and we're going to do this later. So we'll just skip that. Make sure we enter the password for our VS admin. And we won't create a new lift for our SVM management because we'll be creating one just for storage. But if you want to create a lift for SVM management, you can, but that's not necessary. So we'll submit and continue. Right, so we have a new SVM ready to go. So let's go and have a look what we need to do next. So we need to create a LIF. So let's go over to network. Network interfaces. So these are our logical interfaces. We're going to create a new interface. We'll call it iSCSI LIF because we're going to be using it to access iSCSI. And the interface role serves data. We're going to make sure that it's associated with our iSCSI SVM that we just created, and then select protocol access. We don't need to worry about management access, and we'll give it an IP. So without subnet, so we can specify exactly. So the subnet I'm using is 192.168.255. So that means that the IP address of the interface on the ESXi machine will also have to be on this same subnet. So we'll just give this an address on there, 100, no device has that yet. That's a /24 subnet. We don't need a gateway. We need to make sure it's connected to the right port. So as we saw, the network port is B, is the one for our storage. So we're going to make sure that it's connected to B. And then we'll create that. Right, so we have a new LIF there. So let's have a look at the next step. So the next step is to create a volume. So let's go over to volumes and we'll select the SVM that we want to be creating the volume on. So iSCSI, so it's got a root volume there already. And we're going to create a new flex volume. Call this volume vol iSCSI. Choose the aggregate. It's just the one aggregate I have. Storage type, SAN for iSCSI. And we won't worry about any of these other settings except for size. Let's say I'll just make it 10 gigs. And then we'll just create that. Right, so now we have a FlexVol volume. Let's go over to the next step. So now we've got that set up. Now we're going to go over to our ESXi machine and make sure that our ESXi machine has all the networking set up there to connect to our storage. So I'll log into my machine here. So root. Right, networking. So first off, let's go over to VM kernel NICs. So we've only got one VM kernel NIC for our management. So we're going to add a new one for our storage. And the port group, we don't want it on either the VM or the management network. So we're going to add a new port group and we're going to call that storage. So if you look on the example, so the port group here is the storage on the vSwitch. And the virtual switch we need to create. So we're actually going to cancel that. And we're going to go virtual switches, make sure we have one of those first. So add a new switch. I'll call it vSwitch 1. And then connect it to VMNIC 1, which is the one connected to our storage network. The other settings should be fine. Right, so we can go back to VM kernel NICs, create the new VM kernel NIC, and we'll make a new port group called storage. And we'll connect it to our vSwitch 1, which is connected to the right physical interface. And we'll give it a static IP. The address will be 192.168.255, so it's on the same subnet as our storage. And then 101, so it's the next address from the storage device. And the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, so that's the same as /24. We'll leave that there. That should be all fine. We'll create that. Right, so now we've created that. So we've got a vSwitch, got a vkernel NIC now, and we've got our port group here. Good. So next we need to go to storage, and we need to configure iSCSI. So we need to enable that. So here we go, here's the name. So this is what we're going to have to put in. So I'm going to copy this now, Control C, because that's what we'll put in the initiator group on the Netapp. So we'll leave the rest of that. Network, we'll need to bind it to the correct port. So it was the storage one, VMK1 with the 101 address. Select that. And then we'll add a dynamic target. And we'll put 192.168.255.100. So we're pointing to our storage device, and that's where it will see if there's any storage available. Right, so that should all be set up now. So now that we've got that address, we can go and we can have a look at the next step. So we just set up the vSwitch support group and the VM kernel NIC, and we set up the iSCSI adapter. So now we're going to set up an initiator group, a port set, and a LUN on Netapp, and then we'll make sure iSCSI is enabled. So let's go back over here. So LUNs. So we're going to make sure, yep, we selected iSCSI, and first off is the initiator group. So let's create a new initiator group. We'll call this iSCSI init group. We'll make sure the operating system, so this is the operating system of the initiators that will be in the group. So in this case it's VMware because it's VMware ESXi. Make sure that iSCSI is selected, and then you can insert that address that we copied from the VMware. So that's the address of the iSCSI device. So if you go back here, adapters, so our iSCSI adapter, so that came from the iSCSI adapter there, and then we'll create that. Right, but it has no port set, so we're going to have to make sure that it's associated with a set of ports. So we'll call this iSCSI port set. Make sure it's set for iSCSI, and we'll select that interface that we created earlier with the 255.100 address on port B, and then we'll create that port set. We can go back to the initiator group, edit, and we can add that port set. We can save and close. So there we go. So now we have port set. That should refresh. There we go. So now that's all got all the right stuff. So we can now create a new LUN on our iSCSI SVM. So we'll call this LUN iSCSI LUN, and it's going to be used on VMware, and we'll make it 8 gig. So we're going to select an existing volume. So we created that volume early with 10 gigs of space. So we'll select that. Next. And then the initiator. So we created that initiator group earlier with the initiator address of our ESXi machine. So we're going to map that. We're not going to worry about QoS. And we'll create that and finish. Right, there we go. So now we have that set up, and then we're going to also need to make sure that iSCSI is enabled on our SVM. So it's not actually enabled by default. So if you click on that, you see it's not running. So if it's grayed out like that, you click on that and you can see iSCSI start. So now the iSCSI is running, and you can see the target node name. So it's similar, same format as the initiator node name from the ESXi machine. So now, if we go into here, and we go to our storage, which will be able to rescan, just refresh. Oh, and there we go. So that's now popped up because it's detected it. So if we go to our storage now, and we go new data store, call it iSCSI, and we'll select the Netapp iSCSI disk that we managed to detect now. And we'll just use the full disk and finish. Data stores. Now we have the iSCSI data store. And that's it. Right, so now looking at that, you can see that we've managed to achieve these things here. That's pretty simple. And we managed to do all these things in the right order. So some things you can't do before others, as you can see. If you play around, you'll figure out what can and what can't be done before other things. Right, so on to the conclusions. So basically, in this video, I showed you how to use the on-command system manager on ONTAP to configure some iSCSI storage. And then we connected the storage to ESXi and created a data store using the iSCSI storage. So, well, thank you for watching my screencast, and I hope you learned something.